I think the marquee game of the weekend was number 18 Michigan hosting 11th ranked USC. And that game sure played out like we thought it would, right? Zero semblance of a passing game for Michigan in that. Alex Orji getting the start, playing the entire game. He attempted 12 passes on the day.
Yeah, I think the over-under number was 13, and he hit the under.
It was between the tackles, run the ball down your throat, and will USC be able to hold up in the trenches? On the defensive side of the ball, they did. They did. And I don't like 290 yards rushing. When you run the ball 46 times, you're gonna get some yards racked up against you. The explosives are where the
that's what did him in. And I want like that watching that game back, or just like thinking in my head about that game. Is everybody says, "Oh, USC got manhandled. USC got manhandled." Outside of those 4 plays, Michigan did absolutely nothing. But those 4 plays broke their back. But I mean, everybody's going to talk about the late one with Mullings. The one that kills me is the one in the first quarter after the 4th down.
Yeah, the 53-yarder for a touchdown.
That's the one that kills me, because that set the tempo for the day. Not only on what I think was a blown 4th down call, but also that allowed Michigan to play from the front. That allowed Michigan to play from the front and have that, because USC started out slow. A big part of that was their left tackle Elijah Page was getting the crap kicked out of him.
I think that is there's so much football to be played. You should be able to you get back up off the ground off that. The 4th down, that was so close. I know that USC fans are up in arms about it, but if you I stopped it right at a point where he got turned sideways and the ball looked like it had crossed the line to gain. But it was so close. It was like, why aren't they going to take a look at it? Like, why don't you take a look at it? Instead, they're like, nope, moving the chains. We're going to go next play. Boom, touchdown. That one hurts. And those are the momentum plays in a game, though, where, like we talked about this a lot with Oregon and Boise State. Right? The 70-yard touchdown run by Ashton Genty off a sudden change. Mm-hmm. It's the momentum. USC is like, oh, we thought we got him. Well, you need to get back up and you need to be ready to go, or else they're going to pop the big one on you. Those big momentum swinging plays and being able to fight your way back. I thought USC eventually did, but their offense, you said it, they were lethargic out the gate.
That first half, it looked like Lincoln Riley wanted to prove that they could run between the tackles. And it was like, why are you running at literally the strength of this entire team? Mason, did you hear what Mason Graham weighs?
No.
So the broadcasters were talking about their pre-meeting, and they talking to Mason Graham. They're like, "Hey Mason, how much do you weigh?" He's like, I had a light breakfast, so probably about 314. That's a 315-pound man who moves like he's 240.
Yeah.
You have to double team him on every single play.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have an absolute terrorist running off the edge.
Yep.
And it's like, why are you trying? Like, I get it. It's your first Big Ten game and you want to show that you can compete with the big boys, but that's not what you are right now. And don't get me wrong, USC ended up running the living hell out of the ball. I mean, if you take away the Miller Moss sacks, they were averaging almost 8 yards a carry.
Yep.
Because they figured out, stop running behind the guard and run to the edges.
I think that Michigan winning completely one-dimensional is concerning for both those teams, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's concerning for USC because they just wore you down. They put you in a phone booth, and they said, we are going to grind you to a pulp. And they did. They did. But at the same token, Miller Moss throws a pick six. The big momentum plays. Yep. I think it's concerning for Michigan, too, because you made a change at quarterback, and you just said we can't throw the ball, and we won't throw the football. You can't win like that against everybody, especially against the upper echelon teams of the Big Ten. When you play Ohio State, when you play Oregon, in those teams that have backfilled their rosters with more depth, you have to have some semblance of balance. And that's what got USC back in the game was balance.
Yeah, and they threw to run.
Yeah, and at that point, you're going up against one of the best front sevens in college football.
And the best corner in college football.
But I think it's more impressive what Texas did when they went to Ann Arbor.
Oh God, yes.
Because like watching USC just spin their wheels in mud early in the game, it's like, no, Lincoln Riley,
Attack them.
do exactly what Sark did and
Attack.
say, we are going to game plan for this defense and expose them on the edges when they get overly aggressive. We are going to pick you apart in the middle of the field. And Lincoln Riley said, no, I'm going to prove a point. That's a concern.
Yeah, and that bothered me. The second half adjustments were great.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it was getting Elijah Page off the field, moving Mason Murphy over to left tackle, all of a sudden Miller Moss had time. I mean, he didn't really get touched in the second half other than, the sack where he got yanked down by his face mask. Yeah, that was fun. Both times. But they kept him clean. They allowed him. I mean, they chunk played him to death in the second half. And you're just sitting there going, yeah, that's what should have been there. And it wasn't like Michigan failed to adjust. It was, this is what you should have done to start the game. You know where the strength of this team is. It is in their front seven. They are an absolute monster up front. And even Texas said, we're not going to deal with this. We're going to get on the edges and we're going to play with our speed. And I thought USC did a really good job of in the second half getting Zach Branch the ball.
Yeah.
Michigan
Finding ways to do it.
Yeah, Michigan was great at tackling him in space because there were times where I was like, "Oh, he might." There was another play where he had Branch and he overthrew Miller Moss overthrew him. It would have been 6. It was just brutal. It was probably one of the only true throws that Miller Moss had all day where he had time and missed. But I came away from that game going, okay. You acquitted yourself better than I thought you would have in the second half. I did. The first half is what doomed them. The first half is what doomed them. Whether it was, giving up the 2 big runs, the 1 for 50, 1 for 60 that go for touchdowns. Your inability to get anything going. You had -3 yards in the first quarter.
Yep.
Like that's crazy. And everyone's like, oh, USC gave up all these rushing yards. Again, you take out those explosive plays. Michigan didn't do anything. I thought for the most part, USC tackled really well all game long. Keely Arnold and Mascarenas were both great on the ankle pick tackles on the edges that kept Michigan from breaking big plays. But those long touchdown runs, where did they come? Right between the center and the guard. All of them. They came right up the middle where you're just not big enough in the back end to make those stops at the line of scrimmage, and they break tackles and they go.
Here is the big concern for USC moving forward. 1 week, he held up to it. Depth is the issue up front. Front line, they're okay. You just played Michigan. By the way, Michigan's rushing attack is 6th in the Big Ten.
Who are they playing next?
Wisconsin.
All right.
Which is 8th in the Big Ten in rushing. And without Tyler Van Dyke, you know what they're going to do. And I don't think USC is – I think USC wins that game. But this is where –
it's not going to be fun.
This is where the Big Ten wants to just wear you down and put you in a meat grinder. Minnesota can't run the ball, doesn't run the ball. Then you have Penn State, which is number 2 in rushing in the Big Ten. Then you have Maryland after that, which they're just a kind of a middle-of-the-road team. But then you have Rutgers, which is the number 1 rushing attack in the Big Ten right now, has the best running back, one of the best running backs in college football. And then you go play Washington and Jonah Coleman. Like, this is where the physicality week after week after week, it's going to be tested with the schedule that USC has. And that's going to be the interesting part for me, is to see how USC holds up. I thought, yeah, you take a loss at Michigan, but the way that it played out, you're going to be okay with, outside of the fact Lincoln Riley
tried to get cute in the first half.
Just get out of your own way. Use your weapons on the outside, and he did, and they got back in the game.
And the unfortunate thing is that they did lose Mekhi Lemon, and they did lose Lake McCree, probably both for the season.
Yeah.
Lake McCree out with a knee injury, and then Mekhi Lemon got his brain scrambled.
All right.